Welcome to another episode of The Cynical Writer. Before we get started, I would just like to remind everyone that if you would like to support this channel, the best way to do that is to purchase my books. And I've left a link in the description section. And my latest book is titled The Ecstasy and the Ignominy, which is essentially a combination between Tale of Two Cities, Anna Karenina, and a little bit of Crime and Punishment. And it has some Shakespearean, some Melvillian, and some Dickensian overtones as well. Okay, so today's topic is suffering good for writers? Well, I would actually say, on the whole, suffering is not good. I mean, I hate how suffering is romanticized um, in literature and in art and all of that. Um, to me, suffering stifles creativity. It doesn't help it. And I think this idea that, oh, suffering is good is just a way of coping with suffering. It's just a way of saying, oh, it's good after all. But no, it is not good. It is not the way the world. It is not the way the world is supposed to be, in my estimation. And it's a kind of thing where people use that to justify all sorts of abuses. Oh, well, you know, and you could go really far with it. You could say, oh, well, it's good that artists have to work day jobs, or they have to do this or that or whatever, or or it's good that people have to suffer or be in poverty or have illnesses because it helps their art. Well, first of all, even if that were true, it's not worth it in the end. That kind of suffering is not worth it. Um, the thing is that there's so many there are so many writers that people try to point to and say, oh, well, they look at them, they Edgar Allan Poe and various other writers or whoever, like, they suffered and they created good art, or many of the romantic poets. But I'm thinking, yeah, but how much better what art would they have created if they had lived longer? um, there are many writers like Dickens, for example, who didn't create their best work until later in their life, um, when he was relatively stable. I mean, he suffered in his own way, but not to those degrees. And so to me it's like, I want to have stability in my life. I want to have a happy but a relatively boring kind of life, so I can take that frustration and put it in my art. I can take my negative emotions and put it in my art. I don't want my art to become my life. I want those two things to be separate. And I think that's the best approach, because I do think that, for example, that I do think in some instances suffering can help writers create, but I don't think it's something they should have to do. I think that you can create perfectly well without suffering, because if you're a human being, if you're a creative person with an imagination, then you will figure out a way to be creative, even if you're not suffering in the moment. But just from my own experience, I will say that I guess suffering has helped me with writing. Let's say, when if it's kind of just a pent up minor frustration, where I can kind of just take my energy and put it into my work. Um, but when that frustrate, and that's also when I tend to eat more as well, though, is that I will use food to compensate for how I feel. It's not really a healthy thing to do. But when that suffering rises above a certain level, when when it goes from a little from moderate to extreme, then it does not help me at all. I become stifled creatively, um, when I am suffering extremely in that sense. I mean, when I am suffering extremely in that sense, I become nauseous. I have anxiety and I can't do anything. Not only can I not write, I can't even read, watch television. I can't do anything but pace. I mean, I experienced an episode like that not too long ago, and it took me nearly an hour to eat a meal that normally would have taken me a few minutes. Um, and that's because when suffering is that extreme, I can't even eat, because I get this feeling in my chest where everything is coming up to here, and so I can't even eat. I can't concentrate. I can't do anything. And in fact, I would actually say that I tend to eat the most when I'm happy. Actually, if I'm in a joyous mood and I'm thinking, I'm really happy right now, I'm celebratory, life's good, let's eat. That happens sometimes after I finish a book. I usually go on my largest binges after I finish a book. But when I'm suffering extremely, Now, I will eat if I'm only suffering in a minor sort of way, but extremely, I don't even want to eat. And so, no, suffering is not good for me at all. It stifles my concentration. Now, sometimes I suppose suffering can help with my art when I reflect back on, let's say, a period of suffering after it has occurred, and it can give me perspective, and that can sometimes help with my art, but not while I am actually in that intense moment of suffering. It doesn't help me then at all. And so, no, I do not believe that artists should romanticize suffering in that way. I think it is nothing to romanticize or envy. It is something to reject. That notion that it is something to pity. It's not something that we should romanticize. It's something that we should try to cure and fix for the sake of the artist's mental health. It's to me, this notion that artists should suffer is actually why artists have been treated so poorly, because it's like, oh well, you don't need money, you don't need to be paid fairly, you're suffering for your art. I mean, that kind of attitude has been used in order to strip artists of their rights, to say, well, you're just an artist, you don't need to be paid, do it for the passion. And it's like, no, artists are human beings like everyone else who deserve to be treated fairly and respectfully. And so, no, I do not believe that suffering is good for artists, and I think that notion has been used in many cases in order to oppress the needs and rights of artists. So I think that this notion needs to be fundamentally rejected because I do not believe it is correct. And so, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, my books are linked in the description section. And until next time, goodbye.